welcome back to my channel. I'm Veronica with NurturingConnectionsHomeschool.com, where I share resources and encouragement to help you connect with what matters most. Now today's video is going to be about ADHD or ADD. And so many people know it as ADD. The correct term nowadays is ADHD, referring to attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I'm going to share a little bit about what it is, but if you're watching, I'm pretty sure you have a good idea whether it's a struggle that you have personally or you've seen that struggle with your children. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I'm not going to get too heavy into diagnosis and all of that. My goal today is mainly to share things that can help. What are some tips you can do? What are some practical things that you can do in your homeschool to help you homeschool your children with ADHD, or if you're struggling with it personally, to help your children not pick up some of those habits, or to help your homeschool run more smoothly? What are some things that you can do to help yourself as you lead your children in your homeschool? So I hope this will be helpful to you. This is one of those videos you can just tune into and fold the laundry or do whatever else you need to do at this time. But we'll go ahead and get started. So first thing, what is it? What is it? What's happening in the brain? When someone is diagnosed or struggles with ADHD symptoms, you have what could be referred to as a sleepy brain. So the brain is dipping into slower waves, and so it will present itself in one of two ways. One will be the daydreamer. And so for this particular person, they tend to tune out very, very quickly or easily. They're daydreaming, they're in la la land a lot of times, and so for this particular person, they're going to struggle more with staying on task, with paying attention. If they're listening to something, they are drifting off all over the place before they realize, oh, I just missed half of that there. It's very difficult for this person to stay on task. It's very difficult to complete a task. I used to refer to it as sock drawing. It's when you have a difficult thing ahead of you and you go do everything but the thing you're supposed to do. So you clean out your sock drawers, for example, and you do something that doesn't have to get done, but it's not as overwhelming as a thing that does need to get done. And so there's those barriers that get put in place. This person may tend to run late wherever they go. They're the procrastinator, hence the sock drawing. What else? They may have just difficulty focusing, but then they may also lean into hyper-focus mode. And so when they do find something that they particularly enjoy, they may be all into that, hyper-focused on that, whether that's mentally or actually physically doing something. And so then it impacts their ability to engage in other activities and things because of that almost myopic point of view. On the flip side, you may have someone who struggles with that sleepy brain, but they are trying to wake their brain up. So instead of giving into that daydream, they are your fidgeters. They're the ones that are constantly moving, trying to keep themselves awake. Someone once explained it to me as, if you were driving in the middle of the night and you were falling asleep, what would you do to wake yourself up? You might start singing at the top of your lungs, or kind of, hitting your cheeks a little bit, kind of just doing whatever you can to wake yourself up. Those are your fidgeters. These are the ones that are constantly thinking. Their brain is going so quickly. They will interrupt many times because they've already thought 5 sentences ahead of you as you're talking. They may talk too much. They may be more impulsive. They will, again, have trouble focusing. They may be more disorganized with their things. But at the end of the day, they're just different symptoms for usually a very, very similar or the same cause in the brain, structurally, physically. Now, if you wanted to go through the diagnosis route, you could go to specialists, a pediatrician, and you can say, hey, can you test my child? In which case they would give you a checklist. There's no blood test or anything like that. It's more of a checklist, and if you check off enough boxes, then you will most likely get the diagnosis. So whether or not you choose to do that, that would be up to you. But at the end of the day, the option that you will have at that point will be whether or not to give a medication. Now, the medications that they prescribe for ADHD or ADD are stimulants. They are things that stimulate the brain to help get that focus. And for some children, that could be necessary for an amount of time. That's something I'm not going to get into as much because that's a personal decision for every family, kind of weighing out the benefits versus the risks. So instead, I'm going to share with you some more natural options that you may consider trying first, or alongside those medications, to see if you can find something that helps you or your children. Okay, so let's talk about the brain a little bit and the gut. So you have this gut-brain connection going on at all times, and if the gut's healthy and happy, the brain is healthy and happy. But if the gut biome is off in any way, then you're going to see that impact play out in the brain, whether that's a mental illness of some sort or a mental or neurological disorder. Now, there may be some genetic predisposition, so I'm not blocking that out completely, but the gut does have a huge impact in what takes place in the brain. So even a child that could be neurotypical could see more ADHD-like symptoms if their diet is full of high carbs or a lot of sugar. I will say that sometimes doing a gluten-free diet, a dairy-free diet, or at the very least avoiding artificial dyes, artificial preservatives, and sugar can really, really impact someone's ability to think. I know personally for me, if I eat a lot of sugar, which I don't anymore because I know how it feels, but if I have a little bit too much, I will find it very, very difficult to focus. I will find it very difficult to sit and accomplish whatever tasks I have at hand. And so I personally have found that when I just avoid sugar and I stick more with natural sweeteners like stevia or a little bit of honey or a little bit of maple syrup, then I don't have the struggles that I have so much if I have that sugar. That's something to keep in mind with the kids as well. If they are eating a high sugar breakfast with cereal and milk and those types of things, then they are going to struggle more and they may not know why. And so having that understanding can really set them up for success, because you can start off with a high protein meal at the beginning of the day with some good healthy fats, and that'll help stabilize their blood sugar levels and also give them the opportunity to think more clearly and have that homeostasis taking place in the body. So diet is going to be so important. I cannot stress that enough. Another thing that can lead to ADHD symptoms is high levels of histamine in the body. And so for a child who struggles with allergies or has undiscovered food allergies of any sort, if they have a lot of histamines in the body, those are going to go to the brain. So that's important to note. You have different receptors in your body for histamines. You have H1, which produces that runny nose and sneezing and coughing. H2 is in the gut, which would produce the acid reflux, and H3 is in the brain. So if you have a child with those high histamine levels, they go up to the brain, it's going to cause that hyperactivity in many cases or an ability to focus. So being aware of that means you can then look for alternatives or solutions for those allergies that can also help calm the brain down. Some supplements can also be helpful at times. I personally like things like the Focus Patch by PatchMD, Calm and Clarity by Earthly. I'm going to link some of these below if you want to check them out. BrainMD has some, but there are a number of them out there that you can look up to see if you can find something that is helpful to you or your child. At the end of the day, sometimes a little stimulant could help a little bit, like coffee or chocolate or something like that, just in a small enough amount to give that boost, but not so much where it just constantly keeps the brain in that high stimulated state without allowing it to rest in the middle there. So keeping that in mind as well. So practical things that you can do if you or your child struggles with ADHD, apart from diet and taking care of your body that way. Of course, exercise would be another piece to that puzzle. Movement is so very important. There's so many things in our culture right now, in our society, that set us up to develop ADHD symptoms, even if we don't have that neurological piece already in place. And so we need to be aware of those things. We need to get outside more. We need to move more. Starting our days out in the sunlight is going to be so important. Getting the kids outside to slow down will be important. Limiting the screens. There are so many highly stimulating programs out there right now for children that really create that highly stimulated state constantly. And then what you'll usually see is a child melting down after these shows, a burnout after these shows, because their brains become overly stimulated. And so we want to start slowing it down a bit. And I know you're thinking, well, don't they already have a sleeping brain? Yes, but you want to find that balance to help them focus, to learn to train themselves to focus, to think clearly. And when you're constantly throwing so much at the brain, it makes it very overwhelming to be able to filter through that and be able to think clearly. Now, a lot of our kids with ADHD are going to crave that sensory input. They're going to want to see those bright lights and the flashing, things all over the screen and the noises and everything else. And so providing that sensory stimulation in a more natural environment, like outside, going for a walk, listening to water running, maybe that sensory input with putty or slime or something like that can be helpful. But overall movement is going to make a really big difference for a lot of our kiddos and also for ourselves. So when you have children who struggle with paying attention auditorily, one thing you can do is give them something to do with their hands. So that could be putty or floof or blocks to build. It could be some little quiet learning activities like these. I used to have these in a basket for the kids to pick from. It's all the stuff that's just slower, keeps their hands busy, but it allows them to focus more. Now my children do things like drawing or painting, crocheting, knitting, sewing. Their hands busy can really help them focus, and it's something to keep in mind rather than just expecting them to sit still like this, which would make it very difficult because they're going to focus more on sitting still than they are on actually what's going on and what you're saying. So keeping their hands busy is one thing. Another thing is to write things down. So as they get older, really showing them how to take notes, how to make drawings or visual representations about what they're learning. I know personally as a learner, I am a visual learner, so I will write everything down, but then I never have to look at my notes again because I'm committing it to memory through that action of writing it down. So it's just a study skill that I have found helpful, but it's something that can also be helpful for our children to know it as a skill, as a tool that they can use. If they're listening to something, an audiobook, they can be drawing what they're listening to, they could be writing things that are important to them, and they are learning how to focus and use these study skills to help them learn the content at hand. Another thing that can be helpful is goal setting. And so my whole bucket planning system and my planners were actually my strategy for helping me to stay focused and on task and connecting with what was most important in my home in a homeschool. So taking the time each year, each month, each day, or each week, whatever you use, to set those goals. What do I want to accomplish today? What are the top 3 things? What are the top 5 things for this week? But setting those goals, writing them down is really going to be key to helping you accomplish those goals. Same thing for your children, having an agenda of some sort where they can actually check off each and every task that they've accomplished, or a checklist, or a calendar with all the events coming up. But writing those goals down, having them on paper somewhere or on a board somewhere they can visually see, will really help them focus and get those things done more easily. Now, if they have those goals in place, they can see what's going on, but they just can't find the motivation to do it. One thing I found helpful is music. There are all sorts of different types of music that will cater to the different learning styles of the child or yourself. For me, I like Googling ADHD focus music, and I find that that can get me in the zone pretty quickly. Some kids like things that are more fast-paced. Some kids like just background white noise type things, but finding what works for you or finding what works for your kids can just help set that stage and get that brain focused on whatever task is at hand. So music is so important. It's a valuable tool But I strongly encourage you to try if your children are struggling with getting started with their homeschool work, or you're struggling with getting on task and getting what you need to get done. Another thing is the use of timers. So I've shared this in the past. I have this huge timer here. I'll link it below if you want to check it out. But it has these little stands. I put it up, and then I just set the timer. And so this keeps us on track. If we're doing morning, for example, during morning time, I can see how much time I have left. We'll kind of stick to the time as much as possible to keep us moving forward. If I want the kids to complete their chores in the next 10 minutes or 15 minutes, we time it, and it just gets everybody moving a lot more quickly. The thing about the ADHD brain is that a lot of times it's looking for that stimulation to get started. So for example, if there's no timer, there's no goal set, there's no music, then that tends to lead to that procrastination. That's when the person will find that they will do everything else, like I mentioned before, the sock drawing, taking a nap, whatever. Taking a nap, I guess I shouldn't have said that, right? Whatever else they can do. And what they're waiting for is to have just enough stress to get the brain fired up to get going. This is a person that waits till the last minute to do those deadlines, to meet those deadlines. When I look back in my own college years and things like that, I would wait till the night before to turn in those papers. And so I would pull all-nighters, and that's what it took for my brain to fire up to get going. Now that works every now and then. Over time, that additional stress, having that adrenaline rush all the time, all of that going on, is not healthy. It's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for your children to be rushing out the door every time you need to get somewhere, to be rushing through schoolwork every time you're just trying to get them to get started. That's not healthy. It's not healthy for anybody. And so being aware of it is the first thing. When I learned about that about myself, then I was able to say, okay, I'm not going to wait till the last minute. I'm going to set my goals. I'm going to break this apart a few days earlier. I'm going to put my music on and get started. I'm going to set my timer on and work for this amount of time to get myself going. But I had to create those opportunities for focus rather than making stress be my coping skill for focus. Hope that makes sense, but something to keep in mind if that's something you struggle with also, or you see your child doing that, where they haven't done their schoolwork all afternoon, but now it's time to play with friends, and now they're scrambling to get it done, and they knock it out in 30 minutes, and you're like, you could have done that all this time. Let's train ourselves to do better so that we're not living in that constantly stressful state. All right, so timers help, keeping clocks everywhere. I once read somewhere to have a clock in every wall of the room if that's what it takes for you to constantly keep your eye on that. People with ADHD tend to lose track of time. Just bottom line, not paying attention, out of sight, out of mind. If you get hyper-focused on something, then time just goes by and you may not have a concept of that. If you've struggled with that, then chances are your children are struggling with it, because you are probably the mom that says 5 more minutes and then you lose track of the time because you've gotten involved in something else and now it's been an hour, and the kids now think that 5 minutes is really an hour, and it gets confusing from there. So keeping clocks around helps you stay on track alongside with your timers. Other tips that can help, breathing exercises are really, really helpful, just to kind of calm the body down, slow things down enough to get that focused state. So if you have a fidgeter, breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, a longer exhaling breath will really help just kind of ground them. There are things like a hookup where you can do this, cross your legs and just hold still and breathe deeply for about 30 seconds to a minute. That can also help the brain kind of hit that right brain, left brain, activate that frontal lobe, and just bring in that focus that you're looking for. So breathing exercises, brain gym exercises, I have a book on that. So these are some brain gym exercises that have ideas like that just activate right brain, left brain, cross that over to help with that focus that a lot of our kids could use. What else? Changing things up. All right, so almost every brain, not just the ADHD brain, but brains love novelty. So when there's a lot of monotony, it makes it very, very difficult for the brain to stay focused. And so bringing in new things, whether it's colorful pens one day, doing school outside the next day, changing things up in a way that is encouraging and motivating for your kids and for yourself will really help y'all get that focus in place and continue to move forward with your homeschool goals, but allowing for that flexibility that homeschool does provide. And then lastly, teaching your child. Teach your child these strategies. Help them be aware of where they are if they're struggling with focus, and really equipping them with the skills that they can use so that they can be self-motivated and self-directed to use these tools to focus better and do what they need to do better. What you teach them will help them for life. And so if that's something that they struggle with, you're equipping them for life. You're giving them study skills, life skills that they're going to take on with them. And if it's something that you struggle with, then this is your chance to grow. This is your opportunity to grow for the sake of your children and for the sake of you, of understanding yourself a little bit better, giving yourself some grace for the times that you didn't know why you couldn't focus, why you couldn't be present, why you struggled so much with connecting. Give yourself some grace, give yourself some space to grow within this new understanding. I know for me personally, as I looked back on so many of my school experiences and just how I function and operate and my coping mechanisms, everything became so much clearer to me. And having that awareness did not become a crutch. It became something that empowered me to move forward and to grow. And so I use my planner now. It helps me stay on track. I use these tools, and things that I've learned to help me grow, and then I'm able to use those things to help my children as well. So give yourself some grace, be open to learning and trying new things, give your children some grace, create that safe space for them to be nurtured and loved, and know that they are valuable for who they are, and that they can overcome their struggles through practice, through understanding and that awareness. Now, before I jump off, positive things about ADHD. A lot of people with ADHD brains tend to be very creative. So focus on that creativity. Allow your children who have ADHD to grow in those areas of strength. God created each and every one of us fearfully and wonderfully. So looking for the gifts in our children, helping them to cultivate those gifts, and then helping them to strengthen those challenges will really help them grow into all God created them to be. So I hope this was helpful for you. If you yourself struggle with ADHD, or your child does, and you have some tips that you'd like to share, or if you have any questions that you'd like me to address in a future video, please drop them down below in the comments section. I appreciate you being here, and if you found this helpful, please give me a thumbs up on your way out, and I hope to see you here next time.